Universe Makers, First Scroll, written and narrated by C. Taylor. Please review the description for trigger warnings to make sure this is content that you are comfortable with. Chapter 2. The sun was just coming up as the car slowed to make a right turn. By habit, Hannah took the headphones out of her ears and started putting everything back in her backpack. 3 blocks later, the car came to a stop. Hannah's foot tapped quickly against the car's floor as she waited impatiently, wishing she could just open the door herself instead of waiting for the driver. Moments later, the door opened and she was finally able to step out, taking the driver's offered hand for assistance. "Thank you, Henry," she said as she left the car, thankful for the kindness but still feeling silly it was needed. "My pleasure, Miss Mayshaw Banner," he returned. The hulking man released her hand to close the door behind them. He brushed the back of her arm, signaling he was ready, and she started for the front gate. Henry followed close behind. "Good morning, Miss Mayshaw Banner," the security guard greeted as he pulled the gate open for them. "Good morning, Bailey," Hannah answered back. "How's your wife doing?" Bailey's face brightened into a wide smile. "She's doing fine. She and the baby will be coming home tomorrow." "That's wonderful. Congratulations again." She smiled and watched the proud new father continue to beam as they walked past. She turned away. After a few more steps, Hannah paused. The driver stopped with her, his eyebrows pulled together, confused at the break in protocol. Hannah slipped the backpack off, dropped it to the ground, pulled it open, and grabbed out the envelope Catherine had given her earlier. She slipped the Wyndham preparatory tip of the week out along with more than half the cash since she didn't want to insult him. She then turned around and walked back to the guard. "Here, a homecoming gift for your new family," she offered the envelope. Bailey's smile fell. His face went slightly red. He looked up as Henry neared and nodded at him to make sure Hannah's protection knew he wasn't a threat before he leaned closer to her and spoke in a whisper. "What would I need to do to get one of those from you?" Hannah leaned in slightly also. "Nothing," she explained in an equally low voice. "I'll be reporting it to the school administrators so they know it's not a bribe of any kind. I promise, Bailey, it's just a gift." Bailey's face softened, a smile returned, and he gave Hannah a quick wink before backing up. His hand finally extended to accept the envelope. "Thank you, Miss Mayshaw Banner. You were very kind." Hannah flinched at the praise. It wasn't money she'd earned or done anything to get other than been the great-granddaughter of a very wealthy man. A man she didn't even like very much after hearing stories about him. "Babies can be expensive, I hear. I just hope this helps." Bailey opened the envelope and flipped through its contents. His eyes grew bigger as he went. "It will, thank you again," he repeated. Hannah smiled and nodded before she turned back around to continue her journey to the school. Henry was holding the heavy backpack she'd left on the ground in one hand like it was nothing more than a decorative pillow. Hannah took a deep breath and braced herself to take the thing back. Henry pulled it back slightly when she reached for it. "I'd be more than happy to carry this for you, Miss Mayshaw Banner," Henry offered. Hannah looked at the stairs that led to the main building and was tempted. "No, I'd get out of shape and then wouldn't be able to carry it during the week," she thought through out loud. "We could arrange for someone to," Henry started. "Don't say it," Hannah ordered, grabbed the pack, hefted it onto her shoulders, and started for the stairs. By the third step, she was out of breath and could feel her legs start to shake a little. With the next step, she felt the weight on her back lighten. "Henry," she began, intending to ask that he take his hand away from her bag. She looked up and saw how many stairs she had left to go, and changed her mind. "Thank you," she said simply. Henry chuckled quietly. "My pleasure." Way too many stairs later, she finally reached the top stair and passed through the main doors. "Thank you again, Henry," she repeated, and successfully kept herself from falling over when the full weight of her pack settled back on her shoulders. "You're welcome. Let Mrs. Mayshaw Banner know if you need anything this week," he reminded. Hannah nodded. "I will. See you Friday as usual." Henry shook his head. "See you Wednesday, remember?" Hannah was confused for a moment until she remembered her promise to Catherine. "How did you know?" she asked when she realized he wasn't in the room when she made the offer. "My schedule was updated before we got out of the driveway," Henry said as he turned to leave. "Whatever you're planning, Mrs. Mayshaw Banner is really excited about it." Hannah went a little red again and looked down at the aged wood floors, ashamed of how much she was dreading the trip. I'll never be the daughter she really wanted. She voiced one of her fears quietly to herself. Henry stilled and turned back to Hannah. You don't have to be anything. You're a Mayshaw, and that makes you her family. Don't worry about what you think they wanted, he encouraged. Hannah smiled at Henry, hiding a painful knot of fear and disbelief that suddenly tightened her stomach. He smiled back and nodded just before he walked out the door. Hannah let out a shaky sigh and started down the hall. How could she ever be enough to the woman that just over a year earlier found her in a group home when no family would take her in after nearly 5 years in the foster system? How could she ever pay her back for bringing her home to a lavish family mansion, adopting her so that she would one day inherit a vast family fortune? How could she live up to the fact that she was now enrolled in one of the most prestigious private schools in the country? What could she possibly do with her life that would justify the fact that she now had endless amounts of money, influence, and opportunity? The only thing she'd been able to come up with during her many sleepless nights was to successfully run her great-grandfather's company on her own. That would keep the company firmly in the family's name and at the same time prove the old chauvinist that his daughter and granddaughters were worth more than just wives to ambitious men. Now she just had to figure out a way to do that after getting such a late start in life, but first she needed to report her gift to Bailey. Hannah took a deep breath. She rolled her shoulders a little to ease the sore muscles as she pulled open the large door to the administration office and stepped inside. Good morning, Miss Mayshaw Banner. You're up very early today, Maggie, the petite and perky school secretary, greeted. She looked up at her over a set of reading glasses that were perched at the end of her nose and were attached to a beaded chain that looped around her neck. You have no idea, Hannah thought to herself as she smiled back. Good morning, Maggie. I need to report a gift, she explained. Maggie nodded her head, which sent her dark curls bouncing like springs all around her head, and walked over to a filing cabinet. A door opened somewhere down the hall of offices to her left. Hannah could hear the headmistress's voice immediately. Well, we are lucky to have you on board. Your qualifications are truly impressive. I just regret we only have an English instructor position available at the moment. Given your credentials, it seems a severe underutilization of your skills. Not at all, Mistress Stanhope. I'm just looking forward to instructing young minds on whatever you have available, a separate voice explained. Maggie opened one of the drawers and started flipping through files. Hannah shifted from one foot to the other to try and ease the ache there caused by her backpack's weight. Well, I assure you if you stay with Wyndham Preparatory, we'll definitely take advantage of your other, more rare skills. I'm not sure how we would utilize your understanding of extinct languages, but what fun I'll have contemplating it over the next few months. Hannah gave up her struggle, eased the backpack off her shoulders, and set it on the floor. At the same time, Maggie finally found the right report. Your advanced knowledge and fluency of over 15 current languages, however, will be very easy to utilize. Hannah's head shot to the new instructor. She was tall, had long red hair that ran down her back, and Hannah noticed that she mainly used her left hand when she talked, while her right hung limply at her side. Even with the glove covering that hand, Hannah could see that the right hand looked much thinner than the left. Hannah's eyes pulled together, distracted by what might have happened to her arm. At that moment, Hannah noticed the new instructor turned towards her. Hannah pulled her eyes away from the arm. At that same moment, her eyes locked with a set of shockingly blue ones owned by the new instructor. Hannah smiled and nodded a silent greeting. The instructor squinted her eyes at her a moment, then turned back to the headmistress to sign some paperwork. Hannah heard someone close clear their throat loudly. She jumped and found Maggie standing right in front of her on the other side of the reception counter, waving the form Hannah needed. Oh, sorry, Maggie, thank you. Hannah took the paper and started to write. Maggie leaned over the counter to whisper, What do you think happened to her arm? Hannah's eyes grew wide with wonder, but she continued to write, not looking up to give away their conversation. I don't know, but I bet there's an interesting story behind it, she imagined. Maybe she was caught in some sort of civil uprising during one of her many travels. Maggie used her fingers in air quotes at the words many travels. She's traveled a lot then? Hannah probed for more information. Yep, apparently her specialty are these crazy extinct languages, but some of the places she needed to get information on them were really remote. She doesn't trust translators, so she made herself fluent in over 15 existing languages, Maggie informed. Hannah couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was she raised knowing more than one language? She asked, hoping the answer would be no. She'd been told that because she'd passed a certain age, she wouldn't be able to fully understand different languages or pronounce them correctly. Something about the brain shutting off language abilities very young or something. It just sounded mean and she needed to prove them wrong. Maggie shrugged. She grew up in Wisconsin. I can't imagine she'd have been exposed to that many languages there. Hannah fought back a smile. This was getting better and better. Do you know when she started to learn languages? Maggie leaned in closer. According to her resume, it looks like she started during grad school, once she got interested in some extinct language one of her professors had just discovered. Hannah nodded, feeling almost giddy at what she was hearing. Here was living proof that what she wanted could actually be done, and hopefully the new instructor would be sympathetic since she didn't trust translators either. Why is she getting processed now? I didn't think you filled positions halfway through a semester. Hannah whispered, wondering how she had gotten so lucky. Maggie's smile faded. Mrs. Lewis was nearly killed during a home invasion Friday, she admitted. But no one's supposed to know. Don't tell anyone. Hannah nodded that she agreed. Is she okay? Maggie shook her head slightly. She's still unconscious. The doctors won't be able to tell how bad the damage is until she wakes. Hannah could feel her arms start to go numb as the nightmare of her attack and waking up in the hospital flashed through her mind. She needed to change the subject fast before she passed out. So the new instructor was an alternate or something? Maggie shook her head again. No, she just contacted the school yesterday. Apparently, she decided to settle down in New York for good and wanted to teach at a high school level to catch minds while they're most active and open, or something like that. Maggie used air quotes again. The feeling quickly returned to her arms, and the hope she'd felt earlier rushed back stronger this time. She had as active and open a mind as anyone. Hopefully, this new instructor would be happy to help. Shifting her attention slightly, she saw that the instructor had just passed all of the paperwork to the headmistress and picked up a large canvas bag, some kind of old-looking rolled-up paper showing out of the top of it before she turned toward the door. Hannah started to write faster. Once again, Dr. Miller, your timing couldn't have been more perfect. On both our sides from what you've explained, Headmistress Stanhope continued. Yes, I couldn't have imagined my move to New York going any smoother. I'm just sorry it comes at such a sad time for the previous instructor, Dr. Miller offered. The headmistress leaned closer to Dr. Miller and started to whisper, Yes, that is unfortunate. You do remember the explanation we will give the students? She asked quietly. Dr. Miller leaned in also and nodded. Under the circumstances, I agree with the decision. Headmistress Stanhope beamed. I appreciate your discretion. Once again, I feel you will be a great asset to our school. She held her hand out, guiding her to Maggie. This is Maggie, our school secretary. She'll give you a tour of the school and show you to your office, the headmistress explained. Hannah wrote faster as greetings were exchanged between Maggie and Dr. Miller. She finished the last of her explanation, checked all the appropriate boxes on the form, and signed it at the bottom as Maggie and the new instructor were about to leave the office. She left the form on the desk, grabbed her bag, and followed the others out. Maggie started down the hall with Dr. Miller, describing the school layout, facilities, and amenities for the instructors, and covering the safety features and protocols. Hannah followed for a while. A couple of times it looked like there was a pause in their conversation, and Hannah stepped forward. Before she could say anything, Dr. Miller would ask Maggie something, and Hannah was forced to wait a little longer. After 3 more failed attempts, Hannah couldn't wait any longer. Dr. Miller, she finally called. Maggie stopped and looked back toward Hannah. Dr. Miller kept walking like she hadn't heard anything. A few additional steps, she slowed, coming to a corridor and waited for Maggie to show her which direction they'd be going. Dr. Miller, Hannah repeated and stepped closer. Could I talk to you for a moment? The instructor looked around slowly, like she was trying to find someone. Then Hannah could have sworn she saw a flicker of recognition on her face, like she just realized Hannah was talking to her. Dr. Miller turned fully to Hannah a moment later and smiled stiffly. Of course, she finally answered. I apologize for listening back in the office, but I heard that you were fluent in over 15 languages, she started. I'm trying to be fluent in at least 3, if not more, but so far I haven't made much headway on the project. I was wondering if you could schedule a little of your time to find out how you were able to do it? Dr. Miller's expression stiffened. Her stunning blue eyes narrowed slightly as they scanned over Hannah, her head tilted to the right, casting half her face in shadow. Hannah also noticed that she moved the bag she carried behind her so Hannah couldn't see it anymore. I will need to get settled first, but I will let you know, she stated so coldly Hannah felt sudden chills. The new instructor immediately turned her back to Hannah and moved the bag to her front. "Which direction are we to go, Maggie?" she asked sharply. Maggie flinched at Dr. Miller's tone. "Oh, this way, Dr. Miller." She guided her to the left. As they both walked away, Maggie glanced back at Hannah. She gave Hannah a look of confusion and shrugged her shoulders, showing her shock at Dr. Miller's behavior. Hannah mouthed the question silently. "Was I rude?" she asked, trying to make sense of Dr. Miller's reaction to what Hannah thought was an easy request. Maggie glanced forward for a moment to answer one of Dr. Miller's questions, then turned back to Hannah and silently shook her head. No. The two continued down the hall and disappeared around the corner. Hannah was ashamed by how surprised she felt. She shouldn't expect everyone to like her, but since most teachers catered to Hannah, and any of them would have been delighted if she asked them for help, Dr. Miller's treatment stung a little. The news stories about finding the missing heiress had flooded the media. Practically everyone in the country knew who she was or knew her family. Not that Hannah enjoyed the attention, but she just realized she did enjoy that people were usually civil with her. What was all this talk about catching minds when they're most active and open? Hannah wanted to kick the wall. If she was going to run great grandpa's multinational corporation, she knew that speaking the native languages would be a huge advantage both in showing respect and bypassing the need to trust translators. Her years in foster care had taught her a lot, and the biggest lesson was that trusting anyone gave them power to use her for their good, not hers. The more she could do on her own, the safer she would be. But languages had proven to be especially puzzling for her. How had this new instructor been able to do it? What advice did she have to share? There were so many questions she wanted to ask, but the one person she found that could actually give her some guidance on the subject didn't seem to want anything to do with her. Hannah looked back up at the now empty hall. She had to figure out a way to get the good doctor's help. If she couldn't, she had no right to even try to run Great Grandpa Meshaw's company.